request Professor Malashri and Mr. K. Satchidanandan to come and make the announcement for IPPL. Thank you. There is this two-page printout which has been circulated to announce the program. Kindly run through.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's indeed a very great pleasure to be here with all the lovers of poetry and all those who wish to know more about the Intercultural Poetry and Performance Library. It's been a privilege for me to have been associated with the IPPL for some time, and it started in Calcutta about 2 years ago. And the IPPL Calcutta itself derived its inspiration from a similar enterprise in Edinburgh, which is headed by Bashubi Fraser. And then after the success of IPPL in Calcutta for 2 years, there was this thought among the advisory committee members, many of whom are present here today, that maybe we should be looking at chapters in other parts of the country. So the Bombay chapter started a few months ago, and today marks the formal launching of the IPPL Delhi Chapter. So indeed, the advisors to the Delhi Chapter, the names are there, and as I said, Sachi is there, Namita is here, and Keki is also here, and there are others who have promised to help out. I'm glad Sukrita is here, Thomas has just walked in. So, and there are many others that I see in the room who have promised their help, and we'll reach out to other friends in Delhi and elsewhere who will put in their energy into the creation and the activities of IPPL Delhi. So basically, I just wanted to mention that it's a very wide and pertinent vision, because poetry and performance has been artificially separated in the kind of academic environment in which I have lived for 45 years. And it's been very unfortunate that there's a different music department, a theatre department, dance and literature has just been assumed to be that which is in the printed word. But as many of us have done our research, we know very much that in the tradition in which we live in this country, poetry and performance has never been separate. Whether one looks at the classical tradition of the Natya Shastra or one looks at the folk traditions, these forms have never been separate. And the effort of the IPPL is to once again reiterate that these ways of expressing creativity actually come together and belong together. And there are bridges, as the title goes for this evening, bridges that are very worth remembering. But I also want to add the important note of creating an innovation. Because if we just keep repeating the old forms and old ideas, it's not enough. Because those who are poets, those who are thinkers, creators of programs, initiators of new programs, we have to think afresh. So let us look at poetry and performance together, but in new ways. And this is where I think IPPL Delhi's emphasis is going to be on nurturing young talent with mentorship from senior members, senior poets, organizers. So on that note, I hand you over to Professor K. Satchidanandan to talk about the mentorship program of IPPL Delhi.
Thank you, Mala, for announcing the Delhi chapter of the IPPL. I'll only take off from where you left. Yes, poetry and performance have been working hand in hand. They have always gone together in our tradition. In fact, most of our dance forms are nothing but dancing out of poetry. And this is to a great extent true about the Indian tradition of theatre. Because we consider Kalidasa, we cannot say whether Kalidasa is a poet or a dramatist, because in him, as you very well know, poetry and theatre work together. Well, my task here is to announce the proposed mentorship that IPPL will champion. There are many who believe that poetry is just a matter of instinct. Yes, certainly you cannot write poetry unless you have a kind of a gene, a poetic gene in you. But that obviously is not enough. All experienced poets know that it is not enough to have that taste for poetry or instinct for poetry, but it needs to be nurtured, trained. The linguistic skills need to be honed. You need to learn to observe yourself, observe nature, observe society. You need to initiate a conversation with yourself, with nature, with cosmos, and with the mystery around us, which sometimes we tend to call God, because poetry involves all these different dimensions of a lasting dialogue. And to do this, you need to have powers of articulation. You need to be masters of language, not only just masters of language, but of rhythm, of the sound of the language, of meter. Even if you don't write in meter, I would advise everyone to have some understanding of the meter, so that you know the sources of the music of the language, because even in poetry written in prose, you find that there is a kind of underlying rhythm that is always at work. So you need to have a sense of the rhythm and the basic sound of whatever language is it that you write in. And there are other ways of developing your talent. Reading, I would say, certainly is one. Reading poetry in all the languages that you know. I mean, not only poetry written in those languages, but poetry that has been translated into those languages from other languages, Indian languages or languages outside India. And I have, from my own experience, found that even translating poetry is part of the training of a poet, because there you are actually looking at a master very closely. You are doing because translation is nothing but a kind of close reading, as Gayatri Spivak would often define it. So you look at it closely, very much like an apprentice to a painter, looking at a painter working, the way his hand moves, the way he mixes his colors. So the same way, a translator also gets to look at the way a poet works his way through the syntax. He understands the secrets of the language. He understands the sounds and rhythms and all the various qualities of the language that appeal to the finer senses. So it is necessary for you. It is good for a new poet to translate, so that you gradually grapple with the essential mysteries of the art of poetry. And it is important to understand primarily that poetry is an art. Whatever the content, you may be you may be writing about life, love, nature, society, politics, whatever. Ultimately, poetry is an art, and without that essential aesthetic element, poetry does not mean anything. I mean, it doesn't really appeal, and it will not be able to perform even its social function without this essential aesthetics that informs all good poetry. So this is where honing or training, or what you call mentoring, comes in. And well, many people call me a senior poet, but I always call myself a beginner, because there are no senior poets. There are no masters in poetry in that sense of the word, because when you actually write a new poem, well, you do not know really what it is going to be, what is the outcome going to be. So I always tremble when there is an empty paper in front of me, because where are these words going to take me? How am I going to articulate the kind of complex emotions that I have, the complex thoughts I have? How far I have the kind of mastery that I need over the language in order to articulate what I feel within. So that's why every poet, I think every genuine poet, always feels that he or she is in some sense a kind of beginner, because he is not speaking, or she is not speaking about an experience that he or she has already expressed, but there is a new experience in front of you. How to capture that in words, how to encapsulate the essentials of that experience, the whole microcosm that seems to inspire you at that particular moment when you are about to write a poem, how to express that in language. So there is always a challenge. Every new poem is a kind of challenge, and to understand that is important. So what we, the so-called senior poets, can do is at most to help you by sharing our experience with you, by telling you maybe here you can improve a little, this word can be replaced by another word, this image was not perhaps very necessary, this metaphor seems a little awkward. So there are many ways in which we can to some extent help you, but we cannot help you beyond a point, because ultimately poetry is an art which you yourself have to nurture. So well, these are some primary thoughts that just came okay to me when I was asked to announce a mentoring program. So that is where mentoring comes in. I mean, you need that. You need the instinct primarily, but you need also a kind of training. Reading, translation, observation, imagination, all these are essential elements of that kind of training, so that you are able to create something new. I would just end with remembering some lines by Nicanor Parra, the great Chilean poet, who said, well, you write in any way you like. No way is sacrosanct. So much of blood has flowed under the bridge. But only one condition, that you should improve. You should improve on the vacant page. So to find that vacant page, because so many pages have been written, pages have been filled with poetry, and how to find your page in that deluge of pages. That is the ultimate question that a young poet, a beginner, always faces, and that is where maybe to some extent some of us can help you. And we will definitely have a body of mentors in different languages, because this is not only meant for poets who write in English, but also poets who write in the languages. I think that's something we need to think more about, what all languages can be, poets writing in what all languages can be really help, because as you very well know, English and Hindi and Urdu and Punjabi are essentially Delhi languages, and there are many other linguistic communities which also keep producing young poets. So I think that's where we need mentoring, and so I'm very happy to announce this program, which is called Rudu Samhara, a program of mentoring, because Rudu Samhara is associated with the idea of seasons,
yes,
and there's a kind of seasoning that happens in poetry, and that is where mentoring also comes in. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So this is also the opportunity to announce a poetry competition which is going to lead to the mentoring process.
Yes, sir.
As Sachi just mentioned, the whole program is called Ritu Samhara. The details of the rules will be available to you on the website and maybe separately also. The 4 seasons, and entries are invited under these 4 seasons thematically and of course poetically considered and not in a mechanical way. To begin with, I think we decided it would be English and Hindi in the very beginning, and the submission date is 1st of August.
1st of August.
So we hope that you will look at the rules and that many people hear, and please spread the word to young poets. The idea is to get in the poetry. We will have a selection process which will be pretty rigorous, and Sachi has mentioned some of the factors that will be looked into. And then the mentoring process will be available for those who win the competition.
Right. Thank you so much, Maladi.
Yeah.